Welcome to the WAVA Circle, real talk on fertility, wellness, and trying to conceive. I'm Gabby Paychev, founder of WAVA Health and fertility educator. This podcast is your community space for navigating the path to parenthood with evidence based insights, authentic conversations, and genuine support. I'm dedicated to being here with you through every part of your journey. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm joined by Judy Simon. She is a registered dietitian nutritionist who specializes in reproductive health. She's the founder of Mind Body Nutrition and a clinical instructor and staff dietitian at the University of Washington. Her expertise includes PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, fertility, eating disorders, weight inclusive care, culinary medicine, and reproductive health. Judy has held leadership roles in the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, Nutritional Special Interest Group, and is a fellow of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Did I miss anything important from the introduction?
No, I think that's great. Thank you.
I am so honored that you're
Oh,
my guest today. This is going to be an amazing episode. I cannot wait to ask you all the questions. The book that you just published is amazing, Getting to Baby. I just want to show it to everyone. It's packed with so much good information. It's very actionable and also easy to understand, easy to digest. What I find helpful is if you know why, for example, you need to eat more leafy greens, then you're more willing to take the action and make a shift if this is not something you're doing now. And you give away a lot of good recipes for people who don't know how to cook, maybe, or how to combine new ingredients and
mhm.
new things into their cuisine. So I just loved it. Amazing book. Thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge and expertise.
And that means a lot to me because you've been on your fertility journey and now you've taken a step into the world of, educating and coaching and helping folks on their journey. So I have to say that of all the podcasts I've done, and I've done dozens and dozens since the book has come out, you've asked the most extensive questions. So I know that you're diving deep and you have a really strong interest in going beyond the surface. And as you know, with everything that's out on social media, people just say this stuff, so much stuff on fertility with no grounding. And I love that you're sharing like new studies and, on top of it. So I think you're really bringing you're one of those sites that I can say, this is a good site. There's great stuff on it. And we need people like you advocating for people going through fertility on
Thank
their
you,
journey.
Judy. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yes, I have
Sure.
deep passion about this knowledge.
You
And
do. You do.
while this was really fueled by my own fertility journey and experience, it's also my interest in whole body health has been really going on for the last 12 years, even before I struggled with infertility. So I just love digging deeper and asking questions and understanding and learning from experts like you. I feel people can always learn more things and it's I just love those opportunities where I get to interview experts like you. So thank you for joining today.
My pleasure.
Let's start with what does food first fertility mean in one sentence for you? What is the simplest thing that someone can start today, for example?
So, well, I practice my one sentence definition because I can go on and on and on. And I really wanted to say to your audience that food and nutrition are really the foundation of health. It can't be skipped or replaced for conception and pregnancy. Okay, so I want to say it's foundational. And your follow up to what is something people need to have, and this is for both men and women, people of all genders, that they really need to include plant foods and to be more plant forward. And I think that's scary for people because they're getting so many mixed messages. And they're like, well, I don't want to be a vegetarian, or what does that mean? I don't cook. And it's really easy. And we'll get into talking about more examples about that today.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're getting a little more resistance from women or men when it comes to cutting down red meat, for example?
Um, you know, um, A little bit of both. I guess I don't get that much resistance because the way I think we talk about it in the book is we present what we know from the science, and we talk about what you can add in, right? So, for example, I mean, I worked with someone yesterday, and I mean, she was eating steak at 10 in the morning. She was a pretty heavy red meat eater. And I said to her, instead of judging her, I said, are there any types of fish that you enjoy? And she lit up and she said, I love salmon. And I go, fantastic. I go, do you know the benefits of eating fatty fish that are lower mercury? How wonderful those are. And we jumped into meal planning, and instead of saying, don't eat so much red meat, we talked about, oh, what would you think of, one night for dinner preparing salmon, have enough left over for planned over? I go, it could be a fish taco the next day. It could be in your salad. Well, that's 2 meals of fish. So if we start adding in, let's try more plant-based meals, and if we bring up other ideas, all of a sudden I'm not telling her to cut out red meat, but it's kind of shrinking a little bit, and we're trying new recipes, and we may talk about making chili, and I'm like, you can make chili with beans and vegetables if you don't want to put meat in it. So that's kind of the approach that I take. I guess the exception would be if I have someone who's eating a lot of the processed meats. There's a big difference if someone tells me, this patient yesterday told me that not many people do this, but they have fresh venison, her husband
Oh,
hunts.
good.
Well, okay, so that's an example of a red meat that you can't be any more free range grass fed than, when someone has fresh venison. And there are benefits, iron and things like that. There's less saturated fat. So I think you have to dive a little bit deeper. But I think when we work on the add ins, it kind of pushes it out a little bit, instead of shaking your head and saying, no, that's bad. Talk about what can you add in.
I love this approach. I did read in in the book one of the people who were discussing about talking about their journey, one of those success stories, and that's what somebody said is that you don't judge them, you don't tell them these are all the things you need to stop eating. Instead, what you say is these are the different foods that you can start incorporating into your meals and maybe
Absolutely.
swapping here and there this for that, but you're not. So I love this how you're so positively in a way, it's kind of like a behavioral change.
It
Type
really
of thing.
is. And, back when I went through my training, it was a long time ago, and it was what we knew in health sciences. We tended to be very black and white and saying, okay, this is good, this is bad. We were very judgmental in some ways and very behavioral. And then we found out that it was not effective at all. You weren't changing anyone's behaviors. But when you really approach it from an more of a social learning theory, behavior, and motivational interviewing, find out what is motivating these people. Why should they even want to make a change? So I'm hoping that people read our book are thinking, hey, I want to get pregnant. Does nutrition have a role that it might perk their interest? And I think it's important for your listeners to know that, we didn't just dream up this book. This was 15 years of teaching food for fertility classes, and those stories are from women who went through the classes and were so successful that we thought, well, instead of helping 12 people in a class, and it was a lot of shopping for me. I did all those Saturday classes, and then we switched to doing virtual during COVID, which people loved, but we learned so much about what we could do in 6 or 7 weeks, the skills, the information, and then we saw the results. And we did publish an early abstract in American Society of Reproductive Medicine showing just in 6 weeks, we could see biomarkers improve, like blood sugars, like even lipid levels. Back then, we were looking a little bit more at weight. We've kind of stepped away from that. We can talk about that more. And then, when the doctors were seeing, like, oh my gosh, this woman no longer has to go through IVF because she's now ovulating and she got pregnant on her own. And we had many, many of those stories. We thought, all right, time to write a book because there's too much to share, to keeping this just to 12 people at a time, or the patients Dr. Thayer and I would be seeing who we could one-on-one help. We wanted to reach out. And, honestly, my goal is that every library has a copy of it. So it's a resource available at no cost to anyone who's trying to get pregnant because you know how expensive fertility can be for people. We hear
Yeah.
these stories. It's often not covered by insurance. People have a lot of barriers on resources, so we thought if we could provide, a resource that could help more people, we could help build more families in a
That's
realistic way.
That's really kind of you. I'm sure a lot of people will appreciate that. I agree. It can be so expensive. I was lucky because I was working at a company where we had fertility coverage,
Hmm.
and I purposefully looked for a job at a big company because back in my 20s we were dealing with male factor infertility at my partner with
Mm.
my partner at the time, and now I was just getting nervous. I was approaching 35, and was I already knew like infertility is a thing. It's common, and I was able to work there, and I had the coverage, and we spent $100,000 on
Wow.
3 IUIs and 3 IVFs. So yes, with the expense wasn't the big thing for us. At least we got the coverage, but
Hmm.
still, like everything you go through, it's just wow. Like I know people who've gone through mouth to 5, 6, 9, 10 IVFs, and
Hmm.
IVF is amazing, and I'm so glad that it exists. But you can't just keep going and going without looking at what's going on and making some of those shifts. And like you said, nutrition is number one. You have
Hmm.
to. You can't just take supplements, like you mentioned in the book.
No, no. And people are, I'm like kind of shocked. Sometimes I've added up how much somebody spends on something a month, and then they'll put all that energy into that, what they heard or whatever. And then when it comes to food, they're very laissez-faire about, oh, we eat out, we grab this. And it's like, I go, wow, you could get a lot more benefit out of optimizing your health with lifestyle and nutrition because they really do go hand in hand. And I think that, although you've mentioned in the book, we really do a lot of culinary medicine. We really talk about kind of easy ways and very plant-based meals. But I have a lot of success with people that come to me, and honestly, they go, we don't cook. We either go out to eat or we go to the high-end grocery stores and we meet there at 5 o'clock after dinner and we pick up things to take home. And really, honestly, I've helped those people be successful by like, okay, let's build those meals however you're making them. That particular couple, got pregnant, had a very healthy pregnancy, and then when she was pregnant, she came back to see me because she was nauseous, and she goes, "I can't go to those grocery stores to, you know what I mean? I need some other ideas that's falling
Yeah.
apart." And then saw them again as their child got closer to eating. Like, oh man, it's time. We need to have a better relationship. But they had to be ready. And they even thanked me. They go, thank you for not judging me. That I mean, they literally ate out every single meal when I first started. And I worked with them to get them to the point. I go, okay, now when you're building your family, it's really nice to be able to have some of those basic skills to help feed yourselves. I go, your child watches what you're eating. That's where
Yeah.
they learn how you eat. So, really, if you think about it, getting to baby gets you the baby, hopefully, and then you know how to nourish that baby, as their
Yeah.
life cycle goes on. And that's the whole idea.
And and
Healthy babies.
and it's true. You don't have to all of a sudden completely overhaul your lifestyle and your nutrition.
No.
Even if you change things by 20, 30%, it's still going to be a huge
Yes.
improvement. So start with small steps.
Yes. Yes. And you know what's interesting when you talk about small steps, if I can jump in, I want to talk to
Mhm.
you about men. Okay. So you know that 30 to 40% of the time, the fertility issue or problem is male factor, right? So a lot of women come to me, they're like, hey, I'm prepping for IVF. And I said, well, do you know the cause? And I go, oh, yeah, male factor. I'm like, okay. And maybe they're still using his sperm and it's ICSI and they just need the best one. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And it's like, well, where's that partner? Because his
Yeah.
diet makes a difference too. So, like, the woman is feeling like, well, I'm going through IVF. I better get my body in shape, which I agree. But what about him? So sometimes when I can't get the guy to come with, I find out a little bit, from the partner, and I go, okay, if he can just do a few things. And when it comes to food, do you know what my number one thing is? Nuts and seeds.
Oh,
Ask him to pack a handful of nuts and seeds every day because loaded with trace minerals like selenium, magnesium. They really help with sperm quality. They have antioxidants, they have omega 3s. And then, if I can push a little further, I want him to try to eat fish if he eats fish or seafood. Um, yeah, I'm up in the Pacific Northwest, so I want him to make sure he has enough vitamin D. Because sometimes I'll just say, "Oh, I'm taking a male fertility supplement." I'm like, "Okay, well, what are you eating?"
Hmm.
And, we have very few, almost nil, randomized controlled trials. And I know you've been reading studies, and I'm so impressed. We have very few. But they did do a study called the Fertin Nuts trial, where actually they took men for 14 weeks and they did kind of a double crossover where for 14 weeks they gave them the nuts to eat every day. And after 14 weeks, they improved all their sperm parameters. Okay, now they didn't take it on to live birth, but we know at least their sperm were better. And they didn't tell them what to eat in any other way, just adding nuts. So I think those are simple things that we have enough science that we could say, yeah, there's a reason why nuts are good. And but most of the research that is out there is either prospective. We're following a cohort or a group of people like the original fertility diet study, where we were following the nurses' health study and following that cohort that wanted to conceive. Well, very good records, from the researchers of finding out what they're eating, did they get pregnant, lifestyle habits, right? But nobody told them what to do. So that's one way to see relationships. And since then, there's been a lot of other studies, but it's really difficult or impossible to do a true randomized controlled trial where they'd say, okay, you couples, for a year eat this way and you eat that way.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It'd
Yeah.
be really, really hard to do. So a lot of times we're looking at relationships, but if we see those replicated in many studies, that gives us a better idea to understand the science and the mechanism. So I just want people to know that, it's hard to study. Nutrition is not an easy thing. And what they found is it's easier to look at dietary patterns rather than single nutrients, like just omega 3 or just vitamin D. Sometimes we can tell, like supplementation, if we
Hmm.
had that. But what they're looking more at is dietary patterns. And that's so much easier to translate into what's on your plate is a pattern rather than a single micronutrient,
Yeah. Yeah.
because there's so many interactions in health and nutrition.
Great information, great tips. What is the strongest research linking diet to fertility outcomes?
Yeah, I was thinking about that one because as I was talking about studies, how hard it is. And I would probably say it's a tie between the fertility diet, which was the studies done back in the early 2000s at Harvard, where they followed those cohort of nurses. It was because it was the first time they really could look at what somebody was eating and their time to conception or the likelihood to conceive. So I think that was just groundbreaking as far as opening up where we should be going. And I think another really strong study was the Earth study that came out, the results in about 2018. And they're still looking at results from this data sets,
Hmm.
but where they were following couples that were going through IVF. And so they were able to, before they started treatment, not tell them what to eat, but find out what they were eating, what supplements they were taking, exposures, environmental exposures. Because the Earth study wanted to find out, why isn't IVF 100%? If we could take that nice egg and the perfect sperm, why are success rates at clinic 60 or 65% and not 100? So trying to figure out what role did diet and exercise. And what they found really specifically was the women in the top quartile who had the best success for take home baby, not clinical pregnancy or how many blastocytes or embryos, take home baby. Those women, and I share this data all the time with my patients, they actually ate food from all the food groups. They ate grains, they ate fruit, but they did show the relationship, more frequency of fish 2 to 3 times a week. They did find that even including soy, which some people were always afraid of in the past, actually had a relationship with lower amount of endocrine disruptors in their system, which was kind of cool, and trying to understand those mechanisms. And then if the women were depleted, if they were low in vitamin D or B12, and they took supplementation, so they kind of called it the pro fertility diet. it gets so confusing. Like some people will say the Mediterranean diet. The reason I steer a little bit clear from calling it a Mediterranean diet is, most of my patients aren't from the Mediterranean. They're South Asian. They might be Mexican. They might be from Africa. Do you know what I mean? They're from
Hmm.
all different cultures. They're Chinese. And so if they hear something like Mediterranean diet, they're like, well, I'm eating dal and chickpea. Is that the same? So I think what we really need to do is take away cultural bias and just say a more plant forward way of eating, that's more anti-inflammatory, low glycemic, and talk about people. We see the benefits of fish. Well, I have patients who are vegan, so I'll talk to them about what they can get from their diet or supplements, right? So it is the inclusion of plants, the inclusion of fiber, and as we learn more about reproductive health, and we learn that inflammation's a barrier when we think about endometriosis and the inflammation in the body. Can be a highly inflammatory state. And those are some of the most common reasons women go to fertility clinic. And then, there's a lot of emphasis on women are conceiving at the much older. Just
Hmm.
got to say it right. That when you look at the data, it's just moving over. I mean,
And
when I got
men.
out of college, yeah, and men, but it makes such a big difference in women. And it's not like you're on a cliff at 35, it just continues to diminish. So now we're trying to do everything we can do to slow the aging of the eggs, right? So we're trying to be anti-inflammatory. We're trying to save the health of those mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, right? And that's what we want to try to do with antioxidants. And I see a number of women who are over 40 and they're using IVF. They have diminished ovarian reserve, which is really appropriate with their age. It's just more
Hmm.
often age related. Maybe they have endometriosis or PCOS also, but it's just age when they decided to start or, get on that journey. And I've seen, and I don't have any research studies, but just what I've dealt with is quite often they have actually have had a failed cycle of IVF, and I'm like, no blame. Nothing is 100%, but they luckily have more embryos, right? And the doctors learn what they might want to do different. But then they're like, okay, now I want to do nutrition. And they're like, how long do I need? I go, well, ideally a minimum of 6 weeks, but it'd be nice if you had that 3 month window because in sperm, developing new sperm based on the male health. And then you have a time to have that positive benefit on the follicular fluid for the egg, more antioxidants, reduce inflammation. We really like to check, like the fertility clinics send me anyone who barely has pre-diabetes, they send them to me because they're like, oh, we want to reduce that inflammation and we know we can get better outcomes, if their glucose levels are regulated. So we want to manage chronic disease and we want to do everything we can. And I do see these women in their 40s go back and do that second or third IVF and they have successful pregnancies. I have a few women pregnant right now. One was actually getting ready to do her next IVF cycle, and she spontaneously conceived this summer.
Amazing. Yeah,
It's like, oh, I wish I would have done nutrition before the first one. We can't promise, but there's no downside of living
exactly.
a healthier life. There is no downside, right? Every positive step is going to help your health. And I try to remind these people you want to be a healthy parent. You don't want to just get pregnant. You want to be a healthy person. And another thing that I think, we mentioned in the book, and I think it's a good motivator for women, is what you're eating at the time of conception can help reduce risk for what we call adverse outcomes of pregnancy, preeclampsia, preterm labor, and gestational diabetes. Because the women always want to know, well, what do I do? I go, well, we know 150 minutes of exercise, just walking every day, helps improve insulin resistance. And we know that if you're eating well, which means fruits, vegetables, whole grains, which unfortunately we know from the NHANES data, pregnant women in general are deficient in everything. They're low in fruit, they're low in vegetables, they're low in whole grains, they're low in fish, they're low in eggs. And there is not a supplement that can supplement you out of that.
Yeah.
And then think about if you come in not eating a great diet and then you're nauseous your first 8 weeks, baby will take what baby needs, but it's not ideal. It's not ideal for the mom. It's not ideal for the baby. So I feel like getting to baby is not just for fertility problems, it's to optimize your fertility. And more people are, and you're probably learning this too, which is why you have such a great place here, a great platform, is that people are planning for preconception more. They're seeing that their friends struggled and they're like, oh, maybe we should prepare for this a little bit more rather than let's just stop birth control and go.
Yeah,
Prepare a little bit more to have a healthy body
there's a
if they
little
can.
bit
Yeah.
there's a little bit more awareness, even though I still see that most of the people who reach out are those who have been struggling for a long time. I wish
I know.
people start preparing when they decide they want to grow their family,
Oh,
regardless of whether they have trouble
yeah.
conceiving or not.
No, yeah. They reach out to me. They're like, I'm gonna, they're like, I'm gonna do my transfer in 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, well, let's let's make the next 2 weeks be amazing. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, those are really good questions. But when I started in this whole field 20 years ago, we had almost no science. I mean, we knew the basic of biology and reproduction and things like that. And, we knew about B vitamin. We knew the basics,
Mhm.
but nobody really looked at it with an infertility lens. So, like, I was trained in like preconception nutrition a little bit and prenatal. So it was like, I feel like I was one of the lone people out there, you know, um, I used to be like the only dietitian I would see at an ASRM meeting, and I'm so happy that there were researchers and doctors and epidemiologists that were specifically interested in reproductive health of people. So it's come a long way, but I think it has a long way to go too.
Yeah,
It's exciting.
100%.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's great that there's so much research now, so people are more and
yeah.
more aware, and experts too are more
Mm-hmm.
aware.
Yeah.
So, plan forward. Let's specify what that means. What is really the fertility diet? In short, if you can
Yes.
explain
Yeah.
what it means.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in short, a plant forward diet means that, when you're choosing your meals and snacks, you're thinking about fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, lentils. There's a lot of fear about carbs, which could be a whole podcast on itself, right? And I really tell people carbohydrates are your energy foods. And the ones you select can be amazing. Like, don't be afraid of them. Beans have protein, beans have fiber. But you asked me to be specific, so I want to tell you. So that means including, unless maybe you have some GI gut issues, which you should work with someone individually, having at least 2 or 3 fruits a day. I always say vegetables with all your meals and snacks, which is kind of overwhelming, but I just want people to think about. They go, how do you eat 5 or 6 vegetables a day? I go, you make a stew or a soup and you put lots of vegetables in, you're eating 5 or 6 vegetables, right? Like, don't think solo vegetables. Think, oh, I can have green beans, mushrooms, and peppers. How many can I add in, right? Okay. Then using more whole grains. And if someone can't eat gluten, we got lots of whole grains that don't have gluten. We have quinoa. We have all kinds of good stuff. And then trying to include that fish 2 to 3 times a week. I like women to try to include 3 to 7 eggs if they eat eggs because they're the best source of choline in the yolk. So high quality protein. And I'm not knocking protein, but right now I feel like people are obsessed with it. It's not that hard to get enough protein in your diet, and you can do it more plant forward if you're planning. So if you don't eat, you don't have to have dairy. We do have some data that full fat, especially for women with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, one full fat dairy a day has been shown to be helpful with ovulation, but not everyone can tolerate it. So there are great plant milks like soy milk, pea protein, that will give the equivalent protein. Sometimes they're even fortified with calcium. People need that. And then, having, healthy protein and, good things like, having chicken or, lean pork. And then, and having red meat is okay. They do have nutrients, but um, the fattier red meats have more saturated fat, and they've been correlated with poorer outcomes in fertility. So you might use those a little bit more sparingly, looking at the quality and the quantity of how much people are having. So does that kind of make sense? And the reasons why, how did we didn't just make up these foods, how did we come up with this? Is these are the foods that are loaded with antioxidants, okay? They're lower glycemic, they're higher in fiber, um, and they're anti-inflammatory. So those things, and they provide the nutrients to have healthy eggs and healthy living. And if you think about it, they also are preventative on chronic disease. And so many people start off with hypertension or maybe prediabetes or PCOS. So we want to kind of, calm that. And I do just want to really quickly that people kind of get this idea that we want everything in our bodies to be anti-inflammatory. There's actually a role. There are things, mechanisms in our body that we do actually want inflammation. It's that balance in our body, right? Because even if somebody runs a marathon, that can cause a lot of oxidative stress. But if they're eating well, that balance it out and it takes care of it. And, they're building muscle and endurance, which is all a good thing too. So I think I don't want people to think that every, action in your body is, some of it is inflammatory, and that's okay. That's part of nature, and
A
we
lot.
just want to have that good balance. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a lot of good information. So if I want to summarize plant forward, that
Yes.
doesn't mean just
Yeah.
plants. You can still
Right.
eat red meat, but
Oh
maybe
yes.
less.
Mhm.
Focus on having vegetables with every meal, at least three times
Mhm.
a day. Vegetables, fruits, whole grains, nuts, all of these are going to be so beneficial. And like you mentioned, the
Mhm.
book, focus on variety. If you eat a
Yes.
big variety and you're eating the rainbow and your plate is
Mhm.
with a lot of
Yes.
colors, you don't even have to think of, okay, what is this specific fruit giving me? What is this specific vegetable
You
giving me?
don't.
It's
You
so
don't.
much
I
easier.
so agree. It is. It's thinking of that plate, which we have that plate, and I think the most exciting research that has come out is on the gut biome. I think it's fascinating. I didn't know about this 20 years ago, so much research. And you asked me a really good question. I love this question about, is there a difference in the gut biome of a woman with PCOS or endometriosis? You
Yep.
know what the answer is? Yes, there is. And it's really interesting. And like there was just an article just this past month in the Big Fertility Journal looking specifically at PCOS gut biome and mood, all these different things that are related to our guts, right? Endocrine, immune system, right? So sometimes when I have people that are like macro counters, oh, Judy, how many grams of, they want to know them. They're so used to counting things. And I go, okay, try counting and see if you can get 25 to 35 grams of fiber a day. And then they do it. They go, "Oh my gosh, I'm pooping so well. My gut feels really good." Like they really like love it. They're like, I even lost weight for some of the women that's what they're focusing on because they're getting more plant foods in. But getting back to PCOS, they have found that women, when they actually look at the gut biome, what bacteria do they have? They have less diversity, okay, and they have a depletion of certain important uh, bacteria, and they think some of those are actually drivers of inflammation. The same with endometriosis. So we do know what's really interesting. Why do women do so well when they get more fiber in their diet with PCOS or trying to conceive? One of the things is they improve the integrity of their gut biome. I know some people use the term leaky gut. It's quasi-scientific, but they improve the integrity. There's actually enzymes that happy gut lining produces
Mhm.
that will help reduce excess estrogen, which is a state that we find women with PCOS and endometriosis. And there's also the mechanisms that reduce some of the higher androgen or male hormone levels. So it's amazing how much endocrinology happens in the gut. People have no idea. They're like, you have to be kidding me. So I'll give you the example. Gosh, I used to see a lot of people on really low carb diets. They were women in larger bodies, PCOS. They're like, I'm hardly eating any carbs, but they were hardly getting any fiber. So they were constipated, they weren't feeling great, and they maybe weren't even losing any weight, but that's what they thought they had to do. And when I tell them, oh no, whole grains, beans, these things are actually anti-inflammatory, they add fiber. So they built trust with me and we slowly added them in, we saw improvements in their blood sugar, we saw improvements in their gut, and ovulation. So it's amazing all these body systems sort of work synergistically, but we have to give them the nutrition that they need. And some people who can't eat a lot of fiber, maybe taking some psyllium is going to help them to get started, to get more fiber. And then maybe they slowly try beans or lentils or things like that too to add fiber. But that's a journey in itself, eating the fiber, getting more plant foods.
Why is fiber so important? You were talking in the book how the fiber is really the foods, like
Right,
of those.
right. So the fiber is actually the real prebiotic. That's the food for the good bacteria. They want it. That's what they want to eat because really fiber is undigestible plant material, right? And so by the time it gets to your large intestine, it gets broken up, okay, it produces butyrate. We have these small chain fatty acids. They're all good for us. They're really healthy. The other thing that fiber does that's so amazing to be low glycemic or lower blood sugar, um, if I have a patient who eats white rice, that's just their culture. They eat it 3 times a day. I'm not going to tell them you have to switch to lentils. That's really their culture. But if I can say, what if you try eating twice as much vegetables to rice on that plate, like really up the fiber through that? And then they're like, wow, my blood sugars are so much better. Because if they have insulin resistance, what does fiber do? It slows down the absorption of carbohydrates. So if you compare maybe white beans or hummus to like eating white rice or plain white pasta, without protein, they're much slower. And did you know these fiber foods also help the body release the hormone GLP-1? We hear about it, Ozempic, Wegovy is, those synthetic antagonists. Well, these are actually happening in your body. So when you're eating, like, let's say, a lot of white beans, you're going to feel full sooner. It's going to tell your brain, hey, I'm satisfied. And you're going to have a slower blood sugar rise, specifically, mostly for those people who have insulin resistance. And a lot of people don't even know they have it, and 80% of women with PCOS have some degree of insulin resistance. So, and it doesn't matter if they're lean, heavy, in between. We don't know why lean women with PCOS store more visceral fat even when they're athletic. So these same principles can help people no matter what their size is. It's not, I feel like fertility is still kind of hung up on losing weight. Like you'll read all these fertility articles saying, well, weight is a risk factor. And I really disagree with that because just because you're in a smaller body doesn't mean you're eating healthy. Some of the women in larger bodies, they have perfect blood sugars. All their biomarkers are the same, okay? And especially if they're not having ovulatory disorders. Where I work at University of Washington, we published a study and we looked at women with BMI from 38 to 63, which is much larger bodies. And because we have a weight inclusive clinic, we take each person on their health and if they're a good candidate for IVF. We compared those to women with BMIs under 30, which is considered a healthier weight. And there was no difference in outcomes, even in the children at 1 year. And they're seeing that in major medical centers because they have the team. They have the anesthesiologists, they have the dietitians, they have a team of people that know how to help everybody be healthy, no matter what their size is. And they can handle the anesthesia with women in larger bodies because to tell someone, go take a GLP-1 and wait 2 years, go do bariatric surgery, it's pretty
Yeah.
exclusive. And almost, I would say, half the women in my book whose stories we did were women in larger bodies who were sent to me because initially they're like, well, let them focus on lose weight. And I'm like, get the message out. We focus on health. A lot of these women do lose weight, but that's not our goal because they've done studies and it's shown it hasn't made a difference for IVF to be at a lower weight. So why lose 3 months trying to lose weight? Why don't we just focus on health for everybody? And I think that's what we try to address in the book.
I can't agree more. I can't agree more. Don't focus on your weight or counting your calories in your plate,
Hmm.
but focus on what you have in your plate.
Right,
And like the
right.
quality of the food, the quantity, of course, but the quality of the food is very important. And focus on whole foods versus processed
Absolutely.
foods.
Absolutely. And I do try to help women like when they say, well, I love to, maybe snack on X, Y, or Z, and maybe it is kind of ultra processed. Well, half the time they're going too long without eating. And that's like something easy to grab. And I go, what are you looking for? You're looking for salty and crunchy? Let's try a variety of things. Like I don't knock out their favorite snack food or whatever. And we talk about popcorn or either making your own or buying like roasted lentils, beans, wasabi, a lot of nice crunchy things that you can do. Like what are you looking for in crunch? And you almost always when they start eating more regularly, which is something we really talk about in the book, eating competent, feed yourself faithfully, decide how hungry you are at each meal, people are less likely to kind of do the binge eating. Do you know what I mean? They're less likely to just like stop at a gas station and grab something if they've had a good meal and they feel satisfied. So it's really like being compassionate to yourself.
I've noticed the same with me. I mean, you can experiment with yourself and you'll
Yes,
notice
you
the
can.
difference. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
great if you
yeah,
if you take
yeah,
notes and log, and you can really see the difference even within one day. You
yeah.
skip your lunch, or if you have a small lunch and it's not very nutritious, yes, you're gonna be hungry. Yes, you're gonna be needing a snack, maybe even something sweet or something salty. But
Right, right. And that's okay. But I think you're right. Like learning what you're really looking for and trying to go to more of the foods being, I like to call it minimally processed because you can use some of the better quality meal delivery services or the kits. Like we have some that are like local, and they're very local. They use fresh seasonal produce, and my patients actually love them because they come with a recipe. It's culinary medicine. It's teaching them how to cook. So they like those, or I'll tell them about meal services that are local, healthier, fresher, have more plants in them. I know they have a lot of veggies and soups and stuff. And a lot of times that's a nice gateway to cooking more rather than grabbing a fast food. But then kind of knowing like, what are my backup restaurants when it's been a rough day? And they're used to kind of going out, like, oh, what might be some choices that would work for you? And that can feel good to have that plan.
when you talk about the fertility diet, is it any
Mhm.
different for men and women?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would say it's really pretty similar. Like, I like nuts and seeds for both women and men every day because they are so nutrient dense and omega 3s and a lot of those trace minerals. Because I see all these women taking magnesium. I go, because it's good for you. And I go, you could get it from nuts and seeds and whole grains. And they just had no idea. I go, try to get as much as you can from your food, right? Well, really the same is for men. And I think even more so, I feel men just get missed on their chronic disease. Like, okay, women, we go to the gynecologist, the OB/GYN, we're going to doctors all the time. I as men, I just met with a couple pre-conception the other day. He's 34. And I'm like, have you had a physical? He goes, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or something. I mean, they don't go unless something's hurt. So, how do you
Mhm,
know if you have high blood pressure or
mhm.
prediabetes? That's my concern with men. I feel like they're often missed. So, like, when they go to the fertility clinic, they get their sperm and semen analysis, but I think they should be told, go get a physical and find out that you're healthy. And, really, we are learning, and we have a lot of male diet studies too that really very similar. So, although we're focused a little bit more on women in the book because they tend to be the gatekeepers on the whole fertility thing, and we get a lot of single women, lesbian couples, and all too, but I think it's important, just like if you went to get donor sperm, those men are healthy. They do not let men donate. We have a lot of health problems. If you had type 2 diabetes, you would not be a sperm donor. Well, here you're being a sperm donor for your child. You should be healthy too.
Yeah,
Yeah. So you're absolutely all those lifestyle, things that we talk about in the book, endocrine disruptors, sleep, stress, social support. It goes the same way for men, and I think we need to continue to have men. So you should have on one of your podcasts
for
is
sure.
interview a man who's gone, because I think men need to see more men out there talking about it. I
For
think that
sure.
would really help.
And I'm
Yeah.
really glad you're bringing the whole body health. When we were struggling with infertility, my husband had high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Nobody ever mentioned a thing. His sperm tests look fine, but you cannot capture everything on a standard
That is
test.
right.
We did a DNA fragmentation, which seemed okay for his age, but again, like you can't see everything. So
You can't.
even if it looks fine, that doesn't mean that the rest, if something else is going on in your body, it's not affecting the sperm quality. So I'm so happy that you're bringing this up. Like it's
They're
about the whole body.
fragile. Those little sperm, they might have millions. They're so fragile, right? That's why they have to have so many. So that's why they get a chance every, 70 to 80 days. So why not go for it for a few months and give it your all and really feel like, hey, I want my child to have the best, start, because half that DNA comes from dad.
Yeah.
He's making his contribution. We want it to be healthier. So I think that's really really important.
Yeah, I agree. You talk a lot about soy, and that was really a
Oh,
surprising thing for me that I learned when I was reading the book. The benefits of soy, I didn't really
yes.
know. I didn't know because I usually think of soy most of the time. Soy is sprayed with pesticides, with Roundup, and it's very hard to find good organic soy. And usually I don't consume soy for this reason. This is one of the
Okay.
few things that I don't consume. Usually I try to bring a lot of variety into my meals. So I was surprised to read about all the benefits of soy. Can you talk about this?
Yeah, no. And I think, like more than 20 years ago, there was one like little sorry re, research trial that had come out that sort of linked some negatives about soy to men. And I think that has just stuck and it's kind of been disproven. But I first want to say for PCOS, we have a lot of good studies that show that women who eat more tofu, edamame, tempeh, more soy, it improves all your biomarkers for PCOS. So I always tell people that that little soybean, it like has the perfect macros, a protein, fat, carb, and fiber all built in, and a lot of good nutrients. So just eating, like if you go for sushi and you get that yummy edamame that you can eat right before your sushi, that's super healthy. So what they have found is that it's a plant source of protein, and that the nutrients in soy are actually really beneficial for heart health, for diabetes. So anything that helps every chronic disease always comes back to help um, when it comes to fertility. I do want to say a caveat. What I do recommend, because I do not push ultra processed foods. Do you know what I mean? So I really encourage people to eat soy like a soybean, like eating it as edamame, fresh or frozen. Great thing to throw in a stir fry when you're looking for a protein. We use soy milk at my house. It's just soy and water. Sometimes we get the one that's fortified, sometimes we don't because my husband doesn't have dairy. And when you look at it nutritionally, same amount of protein as milk, 8 grams of protein. It's actually less carbs than milk. So some people that are a little more carb conscious, it's kind of a winner, right? So the nutrient profile is really good. And if you think about it, if you think about Asian culture, tofu has been around for so long. And soy, those people who always got scared, or what if you eat too much soy? I go, hey, I've been to Taiwan. They're eating tofu breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and there's a lot of children in that country. It's not
Yeah.
affecting their birth rates. So it is really healthy, but here's else what I like about it. It's inexpensive and it's easy to cook. So I always keep frozen edamame in my freezer. And with concerns about pesticides, getting organic is not hard when you're buying it from the original source. So if you're buying an organic soy milk, or you're buying organic tofu, you can get tofu in any grocery store. You probably could practically get it at 7-Eleven. It's such a common food now, right? And then some people like the fermented um, uh, um, tempeh, which is really
Mhm.
nice to use. And I think that's different than buying some of these soy crumbles that have a lot of other stuff in it. I'm like, just go with the real thing, and you can add it to anything, and it's delicious. It's really good because you could cook Indian, you can cook Mediterranean, you can cook all the Asian cuisines, Thai, everything with tofu. So actually, when I go to a restaurant, I usually always pick tofu as my protein of choice if I'm Asian. And I always feel good eating it too. Good stuff. So soy and then regular beans and lentils that are 30% protein are super healthy.
Hmm.
So inexpensive. And I feel like sometimes people are spending so much money on fertility. I go, if you cook and you eat seasonal produce and you back it up with frozen when it's not in, I tell people, no, you don't have to buy $10 blueberries right now. You could buy frozen that were, from the peak of perfection. Yes, they are too expensive in the winter. Then eat the seasonal fruit. Right now I'm eating pomegranate, oranges, apples, pears, persimmons. I'm eating what's seasonal
Hmm.
because it's a better price and it's going to be more nutrient dense rather than getting it from South America or something. Trying to eat more locally if you can, right? Same with vegetables. It's Brussels sprouts on my plate, green beans, all those winter squashes, which are super healthy. And that's what we want people to try. So, yes, sorry, went on a while, but soy is really healthy.
Would you say, even if you can't find organic, do you still encourage people to eat soy because of the
I do.
benefits?
I
Okay.
do. I really do. And I think when you talk about organic produce, it's more important that people are eating produce because some people are like, oh, I can't afford organic and they're not eating
Hmm.
it. Wash all your produce. Even when the bag of greens says it was triple washed, just take it out, put it in your colander, rinse it off with water because we're always hearing, occasional E. coli breakouts and stuff. And guess what? It happens on organic food too. So you have to do the same food sanitation. I
Hmm.
mean, it's one thing when you have farmers markets. Like when I'm in the farmers market 6 months a year, I'm going to buy from the local farms that have organic. I want to support regenerative farming. Not everybody can afford that. I'm privileged. Not everybody is. Do you know what I mean? So I want to make sure that I don't care if they're eating frozen broccoli every night. It's okay. I just
Yeah.
want them to have the vegetables. Maybe there's a little bit less vitamin C. Well, there's a lot less if you don't eat it, right?
Yeah,
So we
exactly.
want to get those nutrients. And I think that's where food gets so confusing for people. Like you could buy a lot of ultra processed food that's organic. It doesn't make it any healthier.
Oh, I see that all the time. Even my
I
husband
know,
sometimes
right?
brings something at home and he says,
Yeah,
this is organic. I said,
right.
okay, that
Yeah.
it's
It has a
organic.
health
Why
halo
would you
that
eat
it
this?
shouldn't have. Yeah, I think that's really confusing. So I think that, ideally 3 months before couples are thinking about it, thinking about this is a great time, be on my prenatal, think about what I'm eating. And it's also a good time. It's not easy for everyone to stop alcohol and cannabis. So one way I think about it is maybe during that 3 months, you start decreasing how much you have. And you went on a long journey. It took me 7 years with my first child. I used to, after I got my period, not pregnant, I would drink some red wine, coffee. Then, when I was in my ovulatory phase, there was no guidance. I didn't know
Yeah.
what to do. And it's very frustrating. And we don't even know exactly, but we do know when you're actively trying to conceive, safest not to be drinking alcohol, and even for men to minimize. And cannabis has not been shown to do anything positive for fertility. In Seattle, we were an early, we had access to cannabis legally. And now people tell you, I ask everyone like it's normal. And I've really learned a lot of people use it. So, really talking about this is a good time to wean down when you're getting ready
Yeah.
for pregnancy. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I
I
don't
think
judge them. I just be honest, it's the
I
way it
think the
is.
hardest part is for people who are on this journey for years. And
I know.
sometimes it's just so exhausting to
It's okay.
always
It's okay to have that glass of wine and have a
exactly
break. Or
like
even they'll tell me, I go, well, what changes have you made? They're like, I'm not drinking any coffee and it's driving me crazy. I go, you know what? You can have 200 milligrams of caffeine. Have a real cup of coffee in the morning if you love it, and maybe do decaf in the afternoon because they feel like, oh, it's just caffeine, and that's like we don't
yeah,
even have
yeah.
strong data, that it's really impacting it at all. I think these other parts of having a healthy diet can really, really be helpful. And I think taking care, managing your chronic disease, because when women come to me with repeat pregnancy loss and they've had two, three, four losses, then their doctors are looking at their blood sugar, their cholesterol. We want to improve all of that. But that's something ideally that we could do earlier, and maybe that would help, reduce some of the losses that we see. A lot of them we have no idea why, but
Which we touched on PCOS. How about endometriosis? How do we know so far? What do we know so far about the microbiome and endometriosis? Any diet implications?
Yeah. Well, I actually just got to speak to who were they, the Endocrine World Society Endocrine, with like a famous researcher and Holly Harris from Fred Hutch. And when it comes to endometriosis, we are just learning diet wise that the dysbiosis or the poor gut biome is potentially a marker of endometriosis as we're getting into understanding the bacteria. It's a potential driver of endometriosis, and it can influence immune function, inflammation, and estrogen metabolism. And we are starting to see some relationships with more fiber in the diet can help reduce some of that excess estrogen. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
similar to PCOS, and when you hear so many people who have unexplained infertility and then they tell you about your painful periods, endometriosis is so underdiagnosed. So that's why, we have some data on this more anti-inflammatory diet being helpful, but they're really trying to develop biomarkers because the only way you can really diagnose a woman with endometriosis is laparoscopic surgery and actually seeing the tissue. Sometimes you can see it on imaging, and it's really, really hard. And that excess estrogen can have negative impact on egg quality.
Hmm.
So it's even timing with IVF. Like I have women getting their endometrial surgery first to try to reduce it so it has less negative inflammation on the whole reproductive system, right? But it can block tubes. So that and PCOS are probably the two major reasons women go to fertility clinic. But I see diet have more of a profound effect for PCOS because we have more biomarkers to look at in ovulation, whereas it's just harder to see it and measure it. But they are doing diet studies and they are finding uh, uh, more of this anti-inflammatory being helpful for them too, and it has no harm. So that's always the way I go with my patients.
So someone asked a question. They've been diagnosed with endometriosis, and they said last week they had for breakfast they had yogurt with blueberries, and
Mhm.
that didn't feel good with them. And from what I know, yogurt, kefir, these are really good probiotic foods, rich in
They
fiber.
are.
They don't really have lactose, and they're really, really good. And I was wondering, like, why is this causing discomfort for her? Is that something she needs to eliminate or work on incorporating slowly into
Yeah,
her diet?
I think that's a really good question and not knowing all her details. One thing is that endometriosis, that's tissue from the endometrium that is outside the uterus, right? So it can be on the ovary, on the tubes, it can be on the bowel. So there are some women who really struggle with irritable bowel syndrome. So they may be a little bit more sensitive. So even though there's not much lactose in yogurt, and you're right, it's cultured, beautiful probiotics naturally, right? I would probably, for that person, say you might want to trial a lactose free, still dairy, but maybe a lactose free one. Like there's several nice brands that you can get. Try that. Or when dairy bothers people, I usually, well, if it bothers your skin from high androgens like PCOS, I always say, well, try going without it for a month and see how you feel. But same thing with gut. I would maybe try something else and see. Who knows? They might be able to drink plain kefir, but they can't do that yogurt. But I
Mhm.
agree. I like to try to help people get those fermented foods like, kimchi and if you like it, and yogurt has a lot of nice benefits for the gut too. But trying different types of fiber. But that was a good question someone asked. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I'll let them know.
Yes.
We often people talk about supplements, and that's usually the first question.
Uh-huh.
Even though I think the first question should be, "What are we not eating that we should be eating?"
Yes,
And
right, right. What should we be including in? Yeah, I try to keep
yeah,
keep that down a little bit. Yes.
how can we nourish our bodies? This is the first question. How can we nourish
Yes.
our bodies better?
Yes.
And then, if
Yes.
needed, we can supplement. So for men, women, which would be your top supplements that you would usually recommend?
Well, it's probably easier for most women to, not that it's necessary, but give recommendations on like a full prenatal, because I do want to make sure they're getting enough iodine in their diet, because that's important for thyroid functioning and then brain growth for the baby. And that's a more recent, like in the last 15 years, I started adding iodine or using iodized salt, because a lot of people don't use iodine, especially if they're vegan and they're not eating fish and things like that. I'm always a little concerned. Our soil is more depleted of iodine. That's important. Iron is a maybe, because I like to know women's iron status, because someone who have been having very heavy periods may be low in iron, so they would really benefit from it. But then a lot of people, you may know, they cannot tolerate the iron that's in some of the supplements. So some of the supplements don't have iron, and then those women forget, and then second trimester when they hemodilute, they're like anemic because they are not getting enough iron. So some of the preconception supplements have a more modest. But to be really honest, if a woman was just like starting to try and she was eating a great diet, she could almost take a women's multi that had folic acid and a little bit of iron and iodine in it, which most of them do, for a very nominal cost, like a fraction of these designer prenatals that are out there, and she would get what she needed, for preconception, and then maybe up the iron second trimester. I mean, a lot of these new supplements, my concern is, are like, we're going to get everything in a supplement. Well, then they expect a woman to take 8 capsules. Well, you've been pregnant. Do you want to take 8 capsules when you're pregnant and you're nauseous? It's
Definitely, yeah,
hard.
not.
It's hard to
Yeah.
take all that, right? People can barely take one. So I try to work on a more individualized basis, but we talk about in the book what some of the basics are. So you mentioned the iron, the folic acid, and the iodine are probably three of the biggest ones. But that being said, like we saw in the Earth study, if you're deficient in B12 and vitamin D, we want to make sure, and almost all the prenatals, it's not hard to get B12 if you're eating animal products, but having B12. And then I like that there's some vitamin D in them. And then depending where somebody lives, I think it's great if you can have your provider draw like a baseline vitamin D, because we have seen that women who are depleted going into IVF do much better if they're supplemented on their IVF outcomes. And especially women in larger bodies, they sequester that vitamin D. So I try to get baseline levels when I can. I'm like, if you're going through the expense of what IVF and the intrusion of IVF, I would want to know my vitamin D level and make sure that I'm at a good level. But if you have as much as you need, adding more vitamin D is not going to make it better. Does that make sense?
I'm glad you mentioned this. So can you also over supplement?
Yes, you want to know the worst one? Biotin. Some of these supplements have all this biotin. Hardly anyone is deficient in biotin, okay? But people like it for their hair and nails and stuff. Well, the fertility doc started finding, and the endocrinologist, it really can impact your TSH level. And you can have, I believe, an elevated TSH level. So, when you go through IVF, if your TSH is high, they're going to, even if you're not hypothyroid, they're going to put you on some medication. Well, you don't want to go on medication for your thyroid if you don't need it and you had too much biotin in your multi. So I ask women to tell me every single supplement they're taking. And I'm like, please don't take hair, skin, and nails biotin. I go through all that stuff. And I tell them, if we don't have safety data for pregnancy, I go, that's between you and your doctor. If you're asking me my opinion, like on some of the nutristicals, even things like ashwagandha, maybe that's helping you with stress. But if we don't have safety data for pregnancy, I would rather someone didn't
Mhm.
take it. And so some of the supplements, even in IVF, when it comes to when they're going to do their transfer, I go, okay, this is what I recommend. Check with your doctor, because ultimately I feel like they're the one responsible for what you're taking. Do you know what I mean? Like, tell us everything. And then I look it up on the Natural Database of Medicine. I tend to be very conservative. If your doctor gives you the okay, I'm okay with that. But I just feel if you're coming to me, and I do try to tell people where they can get things. Like a lot of people just feel like, oh, I'm taking omega-3, I'm taking this supplement, I'm all set. And then their diets are like, oof, you can't out supplement the diet. So I think it's important. And I think with men, it really depends. Vitamin D is going to be helpful if they're not eating fish, maybe omega-3. We have some data, but even the male supplements, the data is like not that strong. And they've done Cochrane reviews on it. So some of them are like, may help sperm quality. They're not going to hurt you. But I feel like those guys are like, oh, I got my supplement. I'm good. And then they don't do any of the other lifestyle stuff. So that's like my worry that too.
What's the number one behavior you see clients struggle with, and what practical coaching tips help?
Oh, number one, I think sleep in lifestyle is really hard for people. They're not getting enough sleep. So then they tell me, oh, I don't have time to eat breakfast in the morning. I don't have time to meal prep. I don't have time to think about the day
Mhm.
because they just cut it too short and they're sleep deprived in the morning. So maybe helping them with maybe when you're eating dinner, how do you prep for the next day? How do you kind of get your lunch or talk to your partner? Even if you take it a day at a time, even if you're not a week prepper, and sleep hygiene. So I feel like sleep is so foundational for everything else. I think another barrier is people really feel they don't have the skills when it comes to food. They're just like, I have no idea. I don't know how to cook. Um, we just throw things together. We don't eat together. And that's why we put all those culinary tips in just to kind of, like in that week one, we tell people take a knife class or watch a video. Because if you learn how to cut vegetables properly, it's so much more fun. And
Mhm.
you just feel like, you're one of those great chefs on the TV. It's not that hard. I just took a knife skills class 2 years ago just to refresh my skills, and I learned new things that I use. And I've taught cooking classes for 12 years. So, kind of basic skills, sleep. And then for some people, it's access to resources. Do they have enough money to buy food? I mean, these are our times right now.
Yeah, yeah, and even access to basically the education, the knowledge behind.
Yes, getting knowledge, or a lot of times the OBs or certain providers will say, just try for a year. And if you're pregnant, come back, and then we'll see if you need infertility a year. And not, they should be saying, hey, this is a good time for your lifestyle
Hmm.
and get those workups and find out even before you go off birth control, right? So I think that that's somewhere that the whole healthcare team needs to be involved. I think that that's one of the barriers is sleep, time, prep, making it a priority, being compassionate to themselves.
So, in your experience, how long does
Yes.
it take to build stable fertility supporting habits? Because some people, I feel that they get discouraged up front because they think
Yeah.
it's going to take forever and it's not worth it.
Well, we found in our classes that in 6 weeks we could see behavior differences. People eating more regularly, trying new things. And then what was interesting, what I experimented a couple times when we did classes virtually, because I wanted them to meet with their groups and have social support in between and practice their goals. I stretched it out to 12 weeks where we had a class and a week off. And you know what? They liked it. They liked 3 months. Like, okay, I have a little more time to practice some of the things. So I like to say 6 to 12 weeks. And that's why in our book we go, this is a 6 week plan. But if you go through it and you find week one, you want to do it 3 times, hey, that's great. You know what I mean? Take it on your, schedule. I mean, we wanted to tell you to do everything in week one, but that's kind of hard. So we kind of went based on the experience we had working with women and couples, take that step, try a new recipe, 10-minute walks. Well, if you're already walking, check that box. You're already doing it because we do talk about, reducing endocrine disruptors, sleep, all those other lifestyle. But I really think that it's amazing what you could do. Like people say, I'm doing IVF in a month. Is it worth it? I go, absolutely. You might start just setting really positive habits that take you into healthy
Yeah.
pregnancy.
My last question is, where can listeners learn more about your book and also how they can get in touch with you?
Getting to Baby. Okay, so it is available at every major bookseller. You name it, all the major ones, you can just go online and buy it. It's at quite a few independent bookstores if you're lucky enough to have an independent bookstore or ask them to order it for you. I was in Spokane, Washington at this cute little independent bookstore and they had a copy left. I was so excited to see it. So it is, my friends will send me pictures from Barnes and Nobles in Texas, so it's gotten around. They can absolutely follow me or Angela Thayer, my author, on co-author on Instagram. I'm at Fertile Nutrition. My website is Mind Body Nutrition. I can work with people in many states. I'm not licensed in all states, but like I can do the whole West Coast. But if it's a state I'm not licensed in, I have a pretty good network of colleagues that I might be able to refer you to. And I think a question that Gabby had asked me was, when does someone need to work with a dietitian? If you know right off the bat that you have a lot of chronic conditions, you have PCOS and all, and you've never worked with a dietitian, I think it's really worth it to at least do one session with a dietitian working in PCOS and fertility. And I've been training them every year, so I know there's a lot of people out there. Do you know what I mean? I think that's really helpful, but it doesn't mean you can't just start on the book on your own and get a lot of good traction. Yeah, and people can reach out to me. I'll be sharing this podcast and ask me any questions or if I can help them with any resources, I'd be delighted to.
Amazing. Thank you so much for meeting today and for this amazing conversation. And thank you to all the listeners who are listening to this podcast. Please follow and share the episode with everybody who might benefit.